What is it about our political system that has led us to this point where we seem to have near-term spending cuts, near-term tax increases, and the promise that maybe someday we'll get something long-term?
David, over the last 4 years, 4.5 years, the United States has acted decisively to deal with both a financial crisis and an economic crisis. We introduced dramatic measures on the financial side to get our banks back under control. And on the broader economic side, we had a combination of tax and spending policies to help get the economy going. At a time when other countries were moving towards deficit reduction immediately, the United States took a different view. We took the view that in 2009 and 2010, we had to make sure our economy would get back into shape, because the only way to ultimately have a sustainable fiscal policy is to also have a well-functioning economy. At some level, you can't cut your way out of these problems. You have to grow in order to be able to deal with long-term challenges. So I think we showed the flexibility to adjust when December 2010 the economy needed some more help. We did so. When there needed to be an extension of the payroll tax a year later, we did so. There was always going to be a moment when the things that were done to get the economy moving were going to start being withdrawn. And it was always a concern that that be done at a pace that was consistent with maintaining economic growth. With the withdrawal of the spending and the tax measures that were put into place to help us recover from the worst recession since the Great Depression, we're still growing in the 2 to 2.5% range. I think the piece that is not intended is the effect of the sequester. That's an additional 0.5% coming out of our economy. Now, I think it's fair to say nobody ever intended for the sequester to take effect. The goal of the sequester was to have balanced, sensible policy for medium and long-term deficit reduction, which is what the President's proposed in his budget, which is what we certainly hope Congress will enact to replace the sequester. So on the limited issue of the sequester, I would agree that it is an unintended consequence. Even with it, our economy is growing, not as fast as we would like, but it's growing because of the sensible balance we've had over the last 4.5 years between the need for growth and job creation in the short term and medium and long-term fiscal constraint.
I was struck by something that Doug Elmendorf said, the director of the Congressional Budget Office. He said that putting the debt on a sustainable path will ultimately require increases in taxes or cuts in government benefits or services for people who consider themselves to be in the middle class. But we don't seem to hear that kind of candor coming from you or the President, and I wondered why that is.
David, I actually don't think that's a fair characterization of this year's budget. I think that the budget that I just finished yesterday testifying before Congress on, it was a marathon. It was 4 hearings over 2 days, and it has very real sacrifice. It's shared sacrifice, and it says that everyone is going to need to tighten their belt a little bit. What the President's not willing to do is to say that we can do this on the backs of middle-class families, on people who are struggling, and leave people who are doing very well out of the calculus. So he's saying it has to be a balance between spending and tax measures. The President's proposed $2 of spending cuts for every $1 of revenue. He's put a plan together, pieces of which have been enacted. We have done $2.5 trillion of deficit reduction since 2011. The President's proposed doing another 1.8 in a fair, balanced way to reach that 2-to-1 ratio. There are things in that budget that he wouldn't do in a world that he could just dictate alone the results in. He's put forward ideas that we have heard time and again from leaders on the Republican side must be part of a deal if they're going to put revenues into the mix. I hope that this budget is taken the way it was intended, as an attempt to resolve some important issues quickly so that we can have this debate over fiscal policy resolved for a while and give the economy a chance to have confidence that it can just go forward without the kind of start and stop debate that we've had.
So one final U.S. fiscal question. So what odds do you put on getting that done this year? 30%? 10%?
I'm an optimist but not an odds maker.
That's very wise.